Welcome to A Class Act, Conversations in Data and Leadership. I'm your host, Michael, and in every episode, we'll go behind the scenes of great leadership, from key hires and scaling teams to human stories that shape the industry. This is where real conversations happen. Let's get into it.
Good afternoon and welcome to our podcast, A Class Act, Conversations in Data and Leadership. My name is Shannon McKechnie. I'm the Managing Director at MBN Solutions, and today we are joined on the podcast by Adriana Ignat. We are going to talk about Adriana's journey from her home country to Dublin. We'll touch on her career at Google and the work that she's done with MBN, focusing on her key insights into leadership. So Adriana, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Shannon. It's a true honor to be on your podcast.
Excellent. Listen, we'll dive right in. So I'm really keen to start with your journey. What brought you from your home country to Dublin, and what, looking back, were some of the challenges, the learns, and maybe even some of the surprises along the way?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Such a good question. And I love talking about that. So we might as well spend the whole podcast on my arrival to Ireland. So yeah, like you said, I am Adriana. I'm a product person. I've been in product leadership for about 10 years. Most recent gig that I had was as a VP of product and design, developing products for the M&A space. And before that, I used to work at Google for a really long time. Well, I don't know. It felt very short, but looking back, it was a really long time. It was over a decade. And Google brought me to Ireland. I'm originally Romanian. I have not always been in leadership. I started at Google as an apprentice, and I started at Google actually in Poland in 2009. And I used to speak French really well, not anymore. I started working with French advertisers and consolidated the ad business for the French markets around the world out of Poland. That was, I suppose, my first international experience as a newly graduated student. And while doing that in Poland, I really fell in love with the business model and with the product, with how incredibly versatile the ad product was at Google, and how original and innovative it felt even then, back in 2009, where, Google wasn't the presence in many countries in Europe. It was quite incredible to be hired by Google at that point. I remember I actually managed to get a free pass on most of my exams in university because I told my teachers, but I work for Google. And it was quite unbelievable. Some teachers actually didn't believe me, and I couldn't believe it myself. So anyway, I then came to Dublin to do the same thing in the ad space for business development for the Eastern European emerging and growing markets. Myself being Romanian, I had good knowledge of the market and of the dynamic in the region. And slowly but surely, I managed to, I suppose, build a Google presence in Romania, which was an incredible journey. I suppose doing it from Ireland was even more inspirational because I wasn't always at home to be able to meet with my clients or with my partners. I remember at that point, there was a huge growth in the telecom business in Eastern Europe. I was like all this Vodafone, Orange, which I suppose here is Three Ireland. They were taking over territory and business in Romania, and Google was one of the tech companies at that point that felt very emerging and new. Shortly after developing the Google brand in Romania, I remember one of the most fun moments of doing that in Romania was driving a Google Street View car in my hometown. I really did appreciate, and that was one of the most interesting and hands-on, do a bit of everything, lead a bit of everybody, lead a bit of everything experience, while not really feeling very senior because I was always busy doing localizing products, dealing with budgets, small and big. So it was really a versatile experience, really building the Google presence in the region. It takes so much of everything that, I was in a very privileged position to say, you know what, I actually like the products. I like the products that I'm bringing here, and I want to continue and grow in product and product design, product management. At that point in my career, I don't think I was really aware what being a product manager meant. Not that I am now, but it really felt like a calling. So yeah, 13 years later, I was still in Ireland. I suppose Ireland became my, I don't want to say first home, but definitely it's a high competition there between Romania and Ireland. I really feel at home here. My children are both Irish. It's been part of the way I grew as a professional as well. I think working for a big company here in Ireland taught me so much more than just working in tech per se. It's about the, I suppose, resilience that the people I work with have, the desire to always learn more and do more. And also, I think you always have to make sure you realize that the culture that I lived in to Google was very much built by international people, but had a great weight around how the Irish people came together and, build events or really make people feel seen and at home. It was such an incredible community that you wouldn't feel like a foreigner at all. So this is a little bit of my journey coming to Ireland, and we go home quite often as well. Not as often as my mother would want to, but we do.
And I think it's funny you mentioned the people of Ireland, Irish, but they are iconic, aren't they? So you're here, you find yourself working for one of the most iconic tech companies in the world, but working with people who are across the world iconic just by their nature.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everybody overseas tells me I have an Irish accent, which I don't really feel anymore, but I'm sure there's a little bit of there's a little bit of it there.
There definitely is. You can tell it's your home now and it feels like home to you, which is a really nice kind of place for you to land. So thinking about, landing at Google, as I said, one of the most iconic tech companies in the world at that point, and probably more so now. How do you think that shaped your perspective on work and leadership? Because it must be quite difficult then to emulate that anywhere else that you go thereafter, Google.
I suppose one thing that I've seen done at Google and not a lot in other places is that a leader is always acknowledged if they lead people in other places. Whereas at Google, a leader is acknowledged for their leadership skills if they lead the business without necessarily managing people. And I think that was something that really empowered me to grow in my career. I very much love people and leading people, but I think you get more opportunity to learn how to be a leader from leading your domain and your craft and really embracing and taking everything that you can or researching a lot around. Okay, leadership is not just chasing a team that you can, start leading or start managing or directing, but it is leading your domain, your expertise, your projects, your processes. It's about leading yourself and even your personal brand, I suppose. Something that we learn at Google very early on is that people need to lead their personal brand, and it's almost like a flag that you carry with you everywhere. It's your currency. You're able to exchange experiences, work on other things, get to meet new teams, new people, get into a new product. And I think it's very relevant now with AI being at the forefront of every company's roadmap. I think at Google, one thing that I really, really, and kind of like stayed with me over time, there is this concept of the Jenga talent. Now, we all know the Jenga towers and the Jenga talent. And I think this is very, very important for all of the teams that I have seen perform really well, both in Google and outside of Google in other companies, is when every person is a Jenga tower and you get stacked with a lot of skills, knowledge, experiences. And if you're able to exchange talent, so pull a piece out and put it into a different tower or help someone else, or maybe mentor someone or get mentored yourself, the tower will not fall. So you have to find the balance of how many things you pull out of a talent. As a leader, I think that's really, really critical. And it's really important to be able to build up your people in a way that their talents are well stacked and stable, but they're also quite exchangeable and, they're translatable to either other people they might, or other teams they might work with, or other sectors of the business or of the project. whenever I go for an opportunity as a leader, but also as an individual contributor, if you want to make the difference between a leader being a manager of people or not, I think about my Jenga tower. I dissect it a lot because I want to make sure that I stack talents that I don't already have, or if I am to stack talents that I already have, I want to exponentially grow them. So it has to make a difference to my balance overall as a leader and as an individual contributor. So that's how, when you pull something out of it, my stacked talents don't just, all fall on the floor. I think this is something that Google shapes in people and in its leaders very, very well from the onset. It's also the reason why I stayed there for so long. I think overall with these big companies, you will see everyone who leaves them will always say they're going to miss the people. People are incredible. They have brilliant minds. And there's something really, it's an odd feeling. You can be both humbled and inspired at the same time by all the talent that you have around you. And wherever you will go, you will try to replicate that because I wouldn't call it a drug, but it's definitely an addiction. It's definitely something that brings the best out of you as an individual as well. And I think over time, being in that kind of environment is really teaching you how to push your bar up as well. And a lot of people in this pursuit of pushing the bar will rely on good quality leadership. So I think if you only are in the pursuit of being competitive with your peers or with yourself sometimes, right, without having the right resources, the right development plan for yourself, the right examples and role models around you, even people you're being, friends with to help you, empower you, bring the best out of you. It's kind of a solitary journey, and I don't know whether it works or not to do that and to really take advantage of getting better at your craft, at your domain, or at your leadership style.
I love that. And, the Jenga tower thing, I'm going to use that. Thank you for sharing that insight. It's really good to understand how these big organizations, how do they look at leadership? What's the construct that they provide? So it sounds as though that's something that you've obviously taken with you after you've gone. Would you say that's the one thing that you still carry with you today from Google, or is there anything else that was so influential you still rely on today?
I think that's kind of the thing that I carry with me as enabler of people. However, for myself, what I always carry with me is the curiosity across everything. I sometimes get into projects I was just curious about. And I think it's this drive that Google and other tech companies, big companies, are able to instill in people. Or perhaps it's the other way around, that the people are already curious. And this is how they learn and grow, through curiosity. It's a genuine curiosity around new domains or new teams, new ways to relate to the market, new ways to talk to your customers, new ways to listen to your users. And I think that curiosity really applies to everything. And I think it's a huge personality trait of mine as well. I think it's more socially accepted that people are more curious as they start their careers. People are more encouraged to be curious, where to learn or to go. And I think Google has taught me to stay curious and ambitious about things, ambitious about finding, I don't know the right answer, but something that looks like the right answer and works. And then maybe one other thing that I would apply always as a product mind, and I think it is my North Star, even after all of those years of having done and worked with complex products and technology stacks, I would always filter out with the user. I think Google does this very, very well. Other companies in the space too, they will apply the filter of the user feedback to everything they do. And I think this is something that I've carried in my career really well. And I really enjoy that part of this job as well, of this, profession, if you want. Talking to your users very early on and prioritizing that against things that may seem more important in the moment, using that as, if you want, the North Star, the compass of every single technical decision that you're going to make, like really putting it at the center of everything you do will ensure that you're going to be a great product manager, a great leader of your product, a great leader of your team as well. Great user feedback and confirmation that your strategy works. And in order to go that route, I would always say something that I do quite a lot is to get in touch with my users daily. I talk to users on a daily basis.
Love that. And I think it is such a key point that you made. You can want something to work, and if you allow ego to take over, you can make the wrong decisions. But if you listen to your user, your customer, you're more likely to have that long-term success. So a really key point to make.
Absolutely. And, I think that as people grow in their careers and they become renowned leaders, and I've seen this happen both with myself and with other leaders in the space, we're going back to that curiosity. Curiosity is no longer necessarily driving your leadership values. It's actually the ego and the experience. And it's only human that shift happens quite often. But I would always say, and I would always try to do a bit of the both. Definitely trust yourself to the point where, you're to the limits of your experience, of your knowledge, of your skills, of your expertise. But look at it through a frame of curiosity and really deal with the imperfection thought that you might not know everything. And that's okay, because other people do. And this is how, success is not an individual achievement. It's definitely a team effort.
Well, I think that's a really great way to look at it, and, probably speaks volumes about the success that you've had within the product space, Adriana. It's probably a good time to signpost a little bit of, our journey and when we started speaking to each other. So our relationship started forming actually as you were, looking to exit Google and do something different. And, I've had the opportunity to work with you as a candidate. And then you started your new role also in building out that team. So I'm really keen to sort of chat through from your perspective now, having done it successfully at Google, but then going somewhere different and having to do that again. What do you look for in others when you're spotting talent for building a team from bottom up?
Yeah, obviously there's always a bar of skill set and I suppose versatility of their experience. I like that Jenga tower. I look for that Jenga tower in people. And I like people who show up with the ability to deal with the imperfection of, maybe I haven't necessarily been involved in product management before. I've maybe done sales management or sales development, but I can identify the skills and the knowledge that would be transferable here. I'm just giving, an example. I think most importantly, and something that I always look in people is the ability to recognize what they know really well and how to speak to how they would use it to meet the goals of either the role or the business or the project. And I think it's always interesting when you talk to a lot of candidates, and especially now where AI will create incredible CVs. Well, they're going to be very lofty, lots of skills lined up, and you're kind of looking at your CV. It's like, wow, this is an incredible person. And I think beyond that, I think we're going into a space where it's going to be more difficult to recruit good talent or genuine talent, where I think we will evolve. And I think I've done enough interviews over time to see the value in this quality of pitching yourself well and selecting or filtering from all of your experience, from your amazing CV that has buzzwords, from all of the brand names of the companies or projects or certifications you might have done, to select them put them into use during your interview and say, I've done this, or I've been certified, or I have an MBA, or I've done this in my career, or I've worked for Google, or I've worked for this other company. Here's how it will benefit the role. Or show that you've done, I suppose, research around what the role really means. Maybe talk to someone who has this role already. It's so easy today to find people you can talk to and have similar roles with similar seniority, even in your current companies, before you even go and, try out new things. I suppose when I built the team, both in Google and outside of Google, I've always looked for people who are able to translate what they did or what they are good at into what was relevant for me as the hiring company or representative for the hiring company. And to bring that truth through very concise examples, because sometimes when you bring examples from your past career, it's hard. The interviewer will take time to assess whether that's the right example to the anecdote you were looking for, testing, or evaluating against. So what I often do, and I save the candidate from trying to bring an example from their past career by offering them a hypothetical or merely hypothetical solution of a situation that I know they're going to have to deal with if they were hired. So we're going to talk on a scenario that's somewhat probable so that they can relate to it and bring the examples that are relevant to their situation that was presented. I see a lot of times people who are brilliant. They have a lot of certification. They have a lot of achievement skills. There's a lot to unpack, but there's very little business acumen, which often translates into, the maturity that you need to work in a particular organization with the skills you have. I think business acumen is an exercise of time, and it's definitely an exercise of failing fast. I haven't dealt very well in my career early on with failing or not achieving the things that I thought I would be good at or easily in my early career. Until I remember I had a coach and she actually said, the time after you fail is not the time to lament. It is the time to quickly write a brief of a couple of sentences of bullet points of what happened, read it a couple of times, internalize it, and move on. Just know that when you move on with, again, your curiosity, your Jenga talent tower in mind, and the ability to make sure that carries something, failing carries something into our confidence, especially as women. Sorry, I'm going to have to play this card, but it's true. I think we are definitely more prone to punish ourselves, I suppose, when we fail. And I've seen it over and over again, especially in tech-led environments, despite of a clear need not to do so because of the talent and skill and perseverance that these women have, or overall people. I've learned that more often if something happens and it doesn't go according to the plan, it is the time after your perceived failure happens. It is not the time for you to be remorseful, lament, waste your energy in trying to explain to your brain what happened. And I think it's the time to partner up with your brain, find solutions, and maintain a positive mindset that just says, sometimes for me, it's as easy as it's part of life, and then try and move on. And I know that depending on the situation, there's more to it than that, but I often think that something that Google taught me is that traditional saying of failing fast is actually the air people breathe at Google and at these bigger companies. Nobody has time to just stay in the failure, lament, and I suppose not progress. So once you've stepped into it, you really have to pull yourself together and preserve your Jenga tower, preserve a positive mindset.
I think that is such an important point. I think, you as a leader to have that attitude. And, I suppose it's a skill that you have to develop. But if people work in your team and you as a leader, and that's how you show up every day and you're demonstrating that you've been there, you've experienced it, surely that empowers them to be able to feel that they can fail and then succeed thereafter.
I've seen in other leaders that I looked up to. And it's people talk about this a lot, to be authentic in your leadership. And I never really understood what that meant. You kind of, as a individual, your career will be marked by a very, very good leader. And it will be equally marked by a very bad one. So I think throughout your career, people kind of like oscillate between those two energies because, there are the energies that will influence your leadership style later on. You could only hope that the really good experience is going to be lifting you higher than the bad experience will be pulling you lower. It's a pull that has to happen for good leaders to be created. I think with the energy of a really good leader and that authenticity that I was speaking to earlier, I could never really understand, especially early on into my career, what does it mean to be authentic as a leader? Because I suppose when you see a very senior person and you are only starting your career, you're never going to be curious about that person and, go to the cinema with them or whatever, you're never going to be their friend to really understand if they're coming from a place of authenticity. And I think only later on I discovered that the authenticity that I needed as someone who was in a position of looking up to a leader was not necessarily related to their personality, but actually related to mine and their ability to put away their personality and actually look into mine and apply a style of leadership or give me in that moment the type of support, empowerment, lesson, feedback that I needed and that was appropriate to my needs and to my personality or to my style of working. I think that that is the authentic leadership. In reality, it's not about who you are. I think leadership has to become a very impersonal exercise. And you really have to be the reflector and, that the people can look at and see themselves. And if people can look at you and see themselves and get from you what they need in that moment, whether it is a promotion, whether it is great feedback, a lesson, whether it is, I don't know, an enablement project or a training, I think you will be a memorable leader for them and that will make a difference in their career.
Yeah. I think that's such a powerful insight because, thinking back to even my early days in leadership, to turn up authentically, I didn't know how could I, because it's early in your leadership career. How can you do that? But also we're all instantly evolving and changing. And actually, if you're showing up, authentically as yourself, then that could actually be quite challenging for other people who are trying to get to know you. So I think it's a really key point that you make about being clear about what authenticity means within leadership. And I think, we all have different versions of that, but I think the version that you've just described there is actually sort of cleared up in my own mind. So thank you for that. That was really, really useful.
It's not an easy, I suppose, and it wasn't an insight for me to digest and to appropriate over time. I was always trying to, if you don't have an authentic leader, I suppose what will happen is the team will become unauthentic because they will try to constantly please the leader who remains themselves and who thinks that they are leading through authenticity by being themselves and by wanting certain things, which is, obviously you have to bring yourself into work and everybody has their own personality and the right to be themselves in work. But as a leader, you need to also embark on the journey of allowing other people's authenticity to maybe shine brighter than yours because you're going to grow through that. And that is a skill that I've seen so rarely in the leadership space. I don't think a lot of leaders understand that. And most predominantly, I don't think that a lot of leaders are ready to hear that and to make that a reality.
Absolutely.
Because we all lead every day to day, we all lead with some sort of imposter syndrome. And I think that is also a truth bomb that was served to me very early on in my career, which makes it very difficult to draw the line between, I suppose, what will they think of me, or should I be this other person that they would respect more? And I think, again, it's much easier said than done. And especially for women, I can see more women leaders suffer from imposter syndrome, but this doesn't mean that once you've unlocked the truth about, your authenticity and what does it mean to be vulnerable, what does it mean? People will always say, one of the great qualities of being a leader is to be vulnerable. And I don't always know that I understand that when I hear senior people talk about that, because people underneath them, there was you've never shown any vulnerability here. I don't know what you're talking about. So, talk to walk almost like.
Absolutely. There's a difference, aren't there, between descriptive words and, again, everybody's perception of that word and how that then faces itself in reality can be very, very different. And I do think as leaders, it is very easy to list, a number of traits that you believe make you a good leader, but actually showing up as that person every single day, even when the chips are down, I don't know that we all do that. So I think we'll still trying to find, what's the perfect definition of leadership. We don't know, but I think the understanding the words and the meaning of the words of, what you describe as being your leadership style need to be really, really clear on those and stand by them, because that is the authentic piece.
Yeah, and be honest that is your leadership style. And once you have reached that honesty, which I think is a psychological exercise in many ways with yourself as a leader, you can appreciate more who you are, which means your imposter syndrome will shrink and you will know your worth, but in a way that's not boastful and it's actually authentic. So you are easy and you have some comfort around saying thank you, negotiating your salary or your compensation if you are getting more responsibility, something that leaders do very rarely. I think leaders are thirsty for more responsibility, but in a way that in their minds that they would cover more, they would have more authority, or they would harbor a wider team. And I think it's often overlooked for people who are in this position and they're not centered in their leadership journey and they don't know their value, to actually not skip the step of, well, here I am, I can do more, but I also will need more. And it comes from a place of, in Ireland, we say not notions. So notions. So it's not notions. It's actually knowing where you stand. You have a calibrated Jenga tower. You're in full balance of both your skills and knowledge and what you bring to the table, but also you've understood the gifts of your imperfections. And then you can actually be that authentic leader. You can mirror back to people, which is empowering to people. People who are led with a mirror so that they can truly see what they bring to the table, where they have to work, what are the opportunities, how to get them, what does it mean to be political and work. All of those things are realities on the ground. And I think people who are led with a mirror that reflects back will be very successfully led in their careers.
Love that. And as we're talking about the traits of leaders and, the traits of leadership, are there any that you think are undervalued in today's workplace, or traits that are maybe overlooked that are, critically important?
Yeah, maybe I've called it out a little bit. I think a trait that is quite overlooked in leadership is the ability to flex your leadership from leading people into leading yourself and your work. Many people that I have seen evolve into a leadership or a classic leadership role, which involved, now leading people, building their performance, assessing their performance, maybe creating a personal development plan for them, maybe promoting them or not. I think something that's overlooked is that that's not where leadership stops. You still have to apply your leadership to yourself, because as a leader, you still have to do work on yourself. Go to your favorite podcasts, go to conferences, work on your documentation, work on your projects, know your metrics, know your numbers, talk to your users. And I mean, I'm a product leader, so I'm going to give anecdotes from my world. The ability to constantly flex from doing work for your team to doing work for yourself is an incredible skill to have. And I think not a lot of people are able to recognize that they do it. I think everybody does it in some way or the other, but I don't think people realize how difficult that shift can be, because sometimes you have to do it a lot during the same working day. And in order to maintain good leadership standards that you apply to your team, you have to maintain good leadership standards and discipline to yourself. and how you carry yourself as an individual contributor to your team looked in the leadership scene.
Yeah. And I think if there was one key takeaway from this podcast so far, it's probably that, to actually start assessing internally, when do you do that? And I think even that in itself is a small win to take every single day. And hopefully at some point, as you do that consistently, can also start to get rid of that imposter syndrome when you realize how much of a skill that is and how much you use it day to day without even thinking about it.
Yeah. And, I think it's nice to receive external praise. It's, something we're all in the pursuit of. I think the most genuine praise that I receive is always from myself, because I am my harshest critic. So I think doing a little bit of that, a little bit more and more, obviously that's resulted in the actual work. Sometimes it's okay to do it, even if you don't deserve it. It just helps.
It helps you get through the tough days as well, doesn't it?
It does. But I think the way you manage your internal voice, especially when you feel like there's a lot of dependency on you, because obviously you might feel the team is dependent, the OKRs are dependent on you, the competition is dependent on you, and it can feel like a really strenuous, stretched thin type of role. And I think that is really important, because when we're stretched thin, the imposter syndrome flourishes, just thrives. So if you were able to educate your inner voice, almost to say, I'm doing well, I'm flexing between all of these roles, I'm wearing all of these hats, my team is doing well, they're talented people, they'd be doing fine without me. I think a lot of the times, maybe this is something that I've only learned in my most recent years as a more senior leader. One shift that has to happen for you as a leader in order to gain that business acumen and that maturity in the space is for you to be okay, and absolutely maybe even have that as an objective, that your team should be okay without you. And I think once you've appropriated that and you've made peace with that, in a way that it doesn't mean that your team doesn't need you, but it means that you have brought off a team that knows exactly what to do in your absence. I think the true quality of you as a leader is shown. And if that happens, you will have more time to yourself to grow and to stop directing as much. I think a lot of the times we're trapped in this tension around, again, leading from an ego position, almost like where you feel like you need to be involved in everything. You need to have a lot of one-to-ones. You need to take everybody's time. It's almost becoming a lot about you and your presence in the room. I've seen leaders in the rooms where if they had to take a call to leave the room for a minute, there was silence. People wouldn't know what to say or what to do. And I think that's really debilitating. And I think that shows that the team has a problem and that the leader is codependent. It's not the team that's codependent. And I think if you are able as a leader to overcome that with, again, you have to be sincere about that. You have to really believe in your Jenga tower of talents. You have to believe into a team that's able to lead themselves almost, but be there for your team, obviously, if you're needed. I think that's what makes a difference between directing and the leader who is good. And genuinely, that has been really difficult for me to understand over time. It's maybe also because a lot of the times the mentors that I've had in my career were the type of mentors or the type of leaders that were involved in everything. So I thought that's what you need to do to grow. And I think taking a step back from people's jobs and, having to look at their every word written on a paper or everything that they do in an hour. And yes, it is called micromanagement, but micromanagement can be very discreet. And you don't always know it is micromanagement. You don't even know it if you're a micromanager. You think you're doing quite well and you have good stewardship on your team, when in fact you are a terrible micromanager. So I think it goes back to that trust that you allow yourself to have in yourself and in your team. But I always will say, whenever I get the question, what do you think should be your best achievement as the leader of this team. And I always say, for this team to function without me, I want to work myself out of my job. Obviously, with some ability to root myself into the work that I do and to continue to learn and grow together with my team. But I would say a lot of the people that I've seen lead well don't even know what you do, but they somehow know how to help you because they see a level higher or 2 levels higher than where you are. And that is also the thing that your team might need, is that reassurance that, things will fall into place because I have someone who has my back.
Yeah, and I think that's really empowering for the team as well, isn't it? To allow them the opportunity to feel like they can step up, and that creates a brilliant legacy for you as the leader, but it also creates opportunity for them to step up. And probably it leads me quite nicely into the next thing that I just sort of want to explore, because after all your years coming in initially as an individual contributor to moving into leadership roles, if you could go back and either give yourself a piece of advice or give somebody who's, going through that journey themselves at the moment, what would be the piece of advice from transitioning from individual to leader?
That's very good, actually. I don't think there is just one thing people can do. But if I would be giving myself a piece of advice, is don't mistake patience in yourself with stagnation. I think oftentimes people are told, and especially very impatient people are told, be patient, this or that will come, blah, 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 but there's not much more direction other than that. It happens a lot in these bigger organizations as well. Obviously, the opportunity is there, but there's very rigorous ways for people to grow. Opportunities don't just pop out of nowhere. It's really arbitraged and really well presented to the organization, the way people grow. So you have your path. It's almost like you need to climb the ladder. Now, the speed with which you climb the ladder is something of a more personal journey, something that many people will call luck, but it's not always just luck. So going back to that, I would say that don't listen to people who will tell you to be patient at the price of stagnating. And I think this is something that I will tell to all of the young leaders out there. However, do make sure that if you're being patient and if you're told to be patient, and if that is your reality, that you continue to bring yourself up for the next level. And you're not just waiting, right, for your promotion, for your next big job, for your next big gig or whatever that you think will solve all of your problems. Sometimes things that will solve the problem you are in are, I don't know, new trainings, new projects, possibly a lateral move. Lateral moves are really good in building a career of leadership. I always compare leadership with the kind of like the motion of going laterally and somehow growing in your space. But I don't know what animal makes that motion. But children would definitely be able to tell you. But leadership, again, going back to the start of the podcast, it has become a word that people just use so lightly, but it takes so much to be a leader, and it doesn't necessarily mean a promotion to the next level. It means the right experiences, the right teams, the right projects, the right impact. Sometimes it is more important to remove yourself from your 5 years of staying into a job, hoping you'd get promoted to the next level, which you would think, yes, that would get me closer to being a manager in my organization, companies like Google or other companies. Remove yourself from that 5 years. And by the way, I never stayed into a job more than 2 years, 2 years and a half, because that curiosity was just unsettling. So I just had to go for the next thing that would be interesting for me to learn. So definitely patience is a virtue, but not at the cost of feeling like you're no longer learning and you're immobile. So if you feel like your career is not celebrating your skills or your pursuit for learning, for developing yourself, for being in better teams, for being in better projects, for maybe doing something completely new. I remember one of my friends left her very successful career to become a doula. And we all looked at her with really big eyes. Like, you're a director of marketing, at a very, very big company, probably the biggest in the world. She was going for a new promotion in 5 years. People count the years with these big companies all the time. And she said, I want to do something else. I want to learn something else that would bring me the joy that I need in my life and will satisfy my curiosity. I mean, she has now the largest private childcare services in Ireland. And,
Wow.
You can always apply those skills, that growth mindset that people talk about all the time. When you start giving meaning to the things that you hear or see written everywhere, growth mindset, lateral move, leadership, authenticity, vulnerability, blah, blah, blah. All of these things are like a word cloud around our heads all the time. And I think when you start to really give them sense and put them into practice, a lot of doors can open for you. Before becoming a manager, if you want to be successful in managing people, you need to be successful in managing yourself. You can only manage yourself if you have a lot of experiences in a lot of different contexts.
I love that. Brilliant advice. Really, really good advice. And what a lovely story as well about your friend. And I think it really does just go to show, that pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, taking opportunities, it may not be the path that you once deemed to be the path of success, but if you've got the right attitude and, having joy in what you do is a massive thing as well, isn't it? I think you can really only have that long-term sustainable success if you've got that baseline of joy and enjoyment in what you're doing.
Absolutely. I agree.
So, I mean, after all of that and so much that we covered off, what's next for you? What are you excited about? And that can be, I know we've covered off loads professionally, but personally as well, after such an epic journey in your career so far, what's next?
I am at the point in my career where I am definitely shifting into more senior roles. It's very new to me. The mindset that people have in these roles is something that's very intriguing. Again, I could feel that curiosity bubbling. I think that professionally next for me, I think this is where I am in the sphere of very senior leaders, roles that I didn't know even existed. So it's a privilege and definitely an honor. I look at it with a lot of curiosity, almost childlike. And I'm in the pursuit of learning more about this world of senior leaders, very talented people. But also, I think I have a lineup of great events. I think I'm dipping my toe into speaking at various events, mostly geared around leadership and product, which is something that I've done a lot in my past career behind Google's closed doors, but not a lot kind of like to the world. I have to say there's a lot of uncomfortable excitement about that. And it's going to be a pretty busy May with a lot of events and speaker gigs like this. So I'm really excited about that. And hopefully a little bit of a downtime in summer. I hope to be spending my time with my children, my family, my husband, camper vanning in the west of Ireland.
Love it.
So that will be a true test of my leadership. I will tell you that.
Well, what a nice balance, and I definitely hope to go over it. And it's great to see you pushing yourself out of those comfort zones, taking on new challenges, and love to come to watch you stand on a stage and give this insight to lots more people. So make sure you've got VIP.
Absolutely will do.
And I just want to say thank you for today. Thank you for sharing your insights, for
thank
being
you for having me.
So open, so vulnerable, so authentic. That's everything that I know you to be. So thank you for showing it for us all today.
It was absolutely amazing to be here. I know you guys do incredible work. I don't think I've partnered so well with a company to bring that Jenga towers of talent into real life. And it was always a delightful experience working with you, Shannon, if we're to compliment each other at the end of the podcast, and with your team equally. So thank you for having me. It's a great honor, and I hope we do this again soon in the future.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, and I'll speak to you soon. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to A Class Act. If you've enjoyed the episode, make sure to follow the show so you never miss a conversation. And if you're building a data team or making a key leadership hire, reach out to us at MBN Solutions using the link in the show notes.